I even start? Where do I even start today? This is really hard to start. You see, Russian economy was very sick before. This economic tsunami is burying Russia. But that was before, yesterday, not today. Today, everything changed. Yesterday, the USA has placed sanctions, new sanctions, on Russia's two largest oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil. That's the first package of sanctions that Donald Trump has done. That's his first move in 9 months of his presidency. This is the first time he actually did something. And a few hours ago, the Chinese, Russia's second largest oil importer, announced that they stop buying Russian oil. And the Indians, Russia's largest customer, announced an intention to significantly reduce importing Russian oil as well in the future, to not to buy it any longer. And oil is number one bread maker of Russia, Russian federal budget. I used to start the midweek economic reviews by saying the countdown to Russia's economic Armageddon has begun. But that's not correct any longer. The countdown is over. The Armageddon is here. It is Armageddon. Stick around if you want numbers, figures, and events, because I have plenty of those coming up. Howdy, howdy, everyone. Welcome to Inside Russia. This is Konstantin. I am the host of this channel. And welcome to Weekly Economic Review. This is week 43 in review. The goal of this ongoing series is to document Russia's economic transformation in real time. Weekly, consistent coverage gives a truer picture than isolated headlines. Every Wednesday, I track the same core dashboard: rates, budget, fuel, revenues, prices, exports, industries, trade. So you can see what actually changed, why it matters, and where the trend is pointing. Now, this week is a bit different. This is Thursday. Yesterday, there was a breaking news of the new wave of mobilization announced in Russia. It was breaking news, and I decided to swap these live streams. And don't forget, all my reports are built on verifiable public reporting, market data, and open sources. No hype, just facts and context. And now let's jump straight to the analysis. The economy can be analyzed at three main levels, each with its own focus and scope. They are the individual level, also called microeconomic agents. It studies individuals, households, and businesses. Then there is microeconomy. It studies specific sectors or markets, and macroeconomy. It studies the entire national economy. And this is how I structure my weekly economic reviews here at Inside Russia, and I start with microeconomic agents. Basically, it's about what impact changes in the economy have on lives of regular folks or individual companies. And I usually give a few personal stories, and I'll start with the individual level as usual, and I'll give you a couple personal stories. Now, story number one. Imagine a company, a manufacturing company in Western Russia, manufactures pumping stations for natural gas. Sometimes they're called compressor stations. It's a real company with real people who I personally know, and obviously I'm not going to tell the company's name. I want to keep everyone safe. For the simplicity's sake, let's call it ABC Manufacturing. This compressor station consists of few components, large and small, few modules. So in other words. One module is called heat exchanger. Well, it's pretty straightforward. It cools this facility or this product down. So the heat exchanger is something that ABC Manufacturing outsources. It gets it from one of the suppliers. So in the past, heat exchangers were offered to ABC Manufacturing for 3.5 million rubles. That's around $40,000. They were about 7 companies in the market, and they were competing, but the prices were. But this is how much the ABC Manufacturing paid for heat exchanger. Now, the same manufacturers, only there are four. Three are not in the market any longer. Four suppliers, four manufacturers of heat exchangers. The very same modules, the same companies, same everything, only price is different. Now, instead of selling heat exchangers for 3.5 million rubles, supplier sells for 1.7 million rubles. That's around $20,000. Used to be 40,000, now 20,000. It doesn't make any sense, right? Look, everything is so much more expensive now. They buy chips, semiconductors abroad. They buy other components for heat exchangers abroad. And everything's gone up in price. Gas, transportation, taxes. And yet, ABC Manufacturing easily buys heat exchangers for twice as little, half as much as before. Doesn't make any sense. Well, this is what a supplier told ABC Manufacturer. They said they would sell at any price because there are very few companies right now that buy these heat exchangers. There are no customers for compressor stations, gas compressor stations. The biggest customer was Gazprom, and obviously it's bust now. No sales. They don't have any sales, and sub-suppliers are trying to sell at the cost of their product just to cover payroll, just to have enough money to pay for materials bought, procured, and people who worked to create this product. Their staff consists of a number of unique engineers and qualified personnel. And if these people decide to go and look for another job, that company, this is it. It's kaput. It's really hard to find engineers of that qualification on the market. And I know because in our company, we were building the team for 20 years. Okay, it's literally, we were just searching and searching for qualified engineers, very, very experienced, very knowledgeable engineers. That's the core of the business. So the company, the ABC Manufacturing, actually enjoys lower prices. Oh, the same thing goes for AC units. They used to buy AC units for 2,000, 2 million rubles, and now they're buying for 1 million. So that's $13,000 before, now $6,500, $7,000. Same thing, different manufacturer, different from the heat exchanger. AC units, different company, but the situation in the market is very much the same. They're saying that the biggest customer was Gazprom, and it's no more. It does not produce pipes any longer, does not produce pipelines, build pipelines. So this is it. Everyone's pretty much getting out of business. That's personal story number one. Personal story number two, Rostov-on-Don. That's the city where I was born and grew up in. I know a lot of people there, still have friends, distant family, and I know the place. I know it inside and out. And in the south of the city, in Bataysk, and in the north of the city, Severny and Timirnitsky, now there are rolling electricity blackouts. Now, in the north, it's been suffering, people have been suffering for longer. They said a few weeks now. And this is exactly where I grew up, in the northern part of the city. It's basically right next to my house. It was at the end of the city limit, and then there were fields of wheat. I could see them from my window. So now, of course, they built up by apartment blocks. But anyway, they are suffering from rolling blackouts. And in the south, in Bataysk, they just started 2 days ago. But the authorities are saying, well, you'd better get ready. It's going to be a hard winter. No kidding. How many times I've said about the poor state of Russian utilities? A lot. And if you're regular at Inside Russia, you remember what I was saying. Now, the third story, the bonus story, is I got a call from my bank, Russian bank. They think I'm still in Russia. So they called me up, my Russian phone number, and my balance is zero. I don't do any business in Russia. I don't have any significant amount of money there. Well, any money at all. I'm out of Russia. Period. So the guy called me up and he said, "Look, you are a very valuable customer to us. We don't want to lose you, and we would like to give you some money." I said, "Oh, wow, money? Why?" I said, "Well, perhaps you want to open a business." I said, "Okay, how much are you gonna give me?" Well, we're gonna give you 7 million rubles. That's about $90,000. I said, "Are you just gonna give it me like that?" He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Look, have you looked at my account? Uh, what is the bottom line?" He said, "Well, zero." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, we can give you money, we can give you a loan, or we can add a credit line to your account for the equal amount, 7 million rubles." I said, "Okay, what's the interest rate?" "Oh, you have a pretty good. You don't have any other debts." He said that we're gonna give you 7 million rubles at 28%. Annuity, 28%. I'm thinking if I take out 7 million, right, I'd be losing 28%. Now, everyone is trying to get 5% return on their money. People who have some savings. 5% is okay. 6 is good. 7 is great. But imagine you lose 28% every single year. Wow. So I talked to that salesperson, young guy, and I like talking to salespeople because I can get a lot of information from him. And I started asking him questions instead of him asking me questions. Hey, where he started, I taught. Okay, so I started having small talk with him, and I asked him about what he thinks of the situation, current situation, and business community, and among people. I asked him if he makes a lot of sales. Meaning, well, you understand that if you agree to take out the credit, that's a sale for the guy, and he's probably on commission. And he was very sad. He said that he doesn't make any commissions any longer, not much at least. He said that everyone is pretty much in a similar situation. I told him that I don't plan on running a business in Russia. I don't plan on buying anything. He was convincing me to buy a car. He could give me a car loan. He could give me a mortgage. He could give me just cash, anything. So he was just trying to beg me to take the money. I said, "How many people actually take the money?" And his answer was, "Not too many." It's poor people who take out micro loans at 1,000% annual rate, and because they pay every day so much, they take small amounts like $20, $50, something like that. And then that is booming right now because people are out of money. They need to eat something. And the rich people, they don't take out large loans because, I mean, obviously it's stupid. Now, these are changes that are happening with regular Russian folks and companies. And this is Microeconomic Agents, something I try to tell you every week that shows the reality, what's going on the ground in Russia. Okay, and I find it incredibly important. It's important for me to know, and I definitely don't think that you can find this information in many places in the mainstream media. Now, I call all of that. Russian people have started picking up the bill for Putin waging the war in Ukraine. I was asked many times, when do you think people will start paying? Not they paying now. They are paying now with electricity blackouts, with oil problems with, excuse me, they're having problems with shortages, gas pumps. They're having problems with prices at the stores. They're having problems with utility bills going up every 6 months. Yeah, they're picking up the bill, and this is the beginning. And I think they're going to be doing that, paying that bill for a very long time, for decades. Now, let's move to the second part, to the markets, to microeconomy. And I'll start with fuel. Now, I'll start with fuel crisis. There are two topics actually today. I'd like to separate them. One is oil and natural gas, and that's going to be at the very end because what just happened is like nuclear bomb blew up. Okay, that's definitely the headline in news. Now, the fuel crisis is very simple. Ukrainians keep on striking Russian oil refineries with their drones every single night. Now, I have some statistics. In August, there were 14 oil refineries, big and small, hit. In September, 8 refineries hit. And October, 5 so far, and it's been 3 weeks. So there will be more, most likely. Now, the map, the latest map I checked, and there are a few maps. There's a YouTube channel that shows the current state of refineries operating or out of operation in Russia. And the latest I checked is BBC. Generally, BBC is all right. I trust the good source. Now, they have the map with 57 provinces with shortages, with some kind of problems, not necessarily shortages. Some have limitations, some have shortages. But I tell you right away, I do not trust this map. All the maps I've seen are incorrect. For one simple reason. For example, there was a strong drone strike in one of the first strikes in the middle of August. And it put an oil refinery out of operation for some time. And it's definitely right there on the map. But since then, some oil refineries have been fixed. Some were hit for the second, for the third time, but some are back online and some are not. But on the map, if the province is red, it stays red. They do not take the red off the map. Now, same goes with fuel crisis, the lines at the pumps. For example, in Rostov-on-Don, there were lines, long queues at the pump, and the shortage because Rostov is getting hit hard. Not any longer. Right now, the situation is more or less stabilized. Okay, they have been supplying extra amount of fuel, and the problem in Rostov right now is price. It's skyrocketing. Okay, it's so much more than before. People simply cannot afford to buy as much gas. But you won't see any lions at this point until the next strike. Now, but on the map, Rostov province is still red. So the map is not all the maps that I've seen they are not updated properly. And I like to be fair. This is what I stand on. If there's a crisis, a problem, then there's a problem. If there's no problem right now, that there's no problem. Same for eggs, by the way. There was a huge problem with eggs. They just skyrocketed in price. Now there are more eggs. They're buying eggs and growing more, and the eggs are cheap. But there's another problem. They're too cheap because the state started regulating the price, and they do not let companies to charge to sell it at a certain above certain price. And a lot of chickens are being slaughtered right now. So a huge crisis is right at the horizon. It will happen. It's just a matter of time, probably a few months. So anyway, fuel crisis is definitely here. It's staying because hit after hit after hit. Just today, a couple hours ago, Novorizonsky oil refinery was hit out of operation. Okay, the Ukrainians have defined and selected the found weak spot in Russia's military-industrial complex and in Russian economy, and they are repeatedly hitting and hitting and hitting into that spot. So they also started hitting not just at oil refineries, but at oil compressor stations. Those stations that push gasoline and oil through pipelines. Okay, that's now this fuel crisis is growing and it's very complicated. And I need an entire live stream, 30 minutes, to explain you where the current status of this crisis is. I plan on doing it either on Monday or on Tuesday. I will tell you, I'll zero in details what's going on with Russian fuel. It's just I'm gonna give you heads up. I can't resist. Friends, forget about gas. Forget about gas. Gas is not the worst problem this winter that is coming to Russia. And I want you to mark my words and hold me responsible to them. We'll see what happens further. Electricity. That's where the real problem will be. Because people can live without gas. They can walk. They can sit home. They can ride bicycles, whatever, They can ride public transportation. There's still public transportation in Russia. But if there is no electricity, holy moly. A lot of houses in Russia, private houses, are heated by electricity. Most of apartment blocks have central heating. So if this big power plant is out of operation, there's no electricity, there's no heat generated, because electricity and heat in Russia are generated simultaneously. So forget about it. And without electricity, it's really, really bad. You can't survive cold winter. That's something much scarier than fuel prices, fuel crisis, and fuel prices, of course. Russians have been doing it to Ukraine for the past 3.5 years. They've been, especially in winters, they've been hitting power plants. Tripolskaya near Kiev, and in Kharkov and Dnipro and the other ones. DTEK is the company that suffered. I know them. They used to be my clients way back. We used to design a lot of power units for them. I've been to some of those power plants that have been destroyed. And I've been to the Russian ones too. The Ukrainians, first of all, they have the backing of the Europeans. They have access to equipment. They can replace probably on the go right now, on the fly. they can repair, replace. Russians, on the other hand, no access. They've been cut off all supplies, spare parts, engineers, chief engineers, and so forth. So this is a big crisis. I'm going to be talking about that. So this is it about fuel crisis, fuel situation. And I'd like to talk about food a little bit. We all eat every day. Well, at least most of us. Now, food. What's happening with the dairy products? Demand for dairy products in Russia decreased by 2.8% year-on-year basis. That's 9 months, first 9 months of 2025 compared to first 9 months of 2024. Now, I am citing the data from the analytics company called Nielsen. I think Nielsen Research. Very famous company. I trust data that comes out of Nielsen. The trend is worsening. For example, in May, the decline in demand for dairy products was just 1.2%. And the biggest drop in demand was for butter. Of course, butter. Minus 11.2%. More than 10%, 11.2. Now, ultra pasteurized milk also minus 11.1%. Sales of dry milk, or sterilized milk, right? Dropped by 10.8%. Sales of kefir, that's fermented milk, dropped by 4.3%. Kefir is very cheap. It's actually, if you don't have much money at all, you drink kefir because that's food. That's enough to get you by, It still declined by 4.3%. And sour cream declined by 3.4%, Numbers don't lie. Putin lies, like his government lies, his bodies lie, but numbers, they don't lie, especially they come from Nielsen. Now, according to Nielsen's calculations, sales volumes of fermented baked milk, Glaber, and processed cheese declined as well. Let me just do something here. Now, processed cheese, the numbers are down by 7.1%. That's very significant for the industry. And the experts link the decline in demand to rising prices of dairy products due to inflation and increased production costs. I'm telling you, they're geniuses, those experts, okay? Yeah, it makes sense. Stuff costs so much more now. But, people have so much less disposable income. And then you linked 2 and 2 together and you get the decline. Now, let's talk about prices for dairy products a little bit. In the first 7 months of 2025, and that's what we have statistics for right now, butter rose in price by an average 36%. 36% in 6 months. And Russian government, all these officials, very serious officials, seriously telling us that real official inflation is less than 10%. And at the same time, just half of a year, price of butter goes up by 36%. Milk and sour cream have increased by 22% on average. Cheese increased by 19%. That data comes from Rosstat, and I think it's cooked, so real numbers are worse, but we have no way of checking that. Well, actually, we do, but if I lived in Russia and I would just go and filmed prices, okay? But even Rosstat gives us this numbers. Folks, what do you think? If you go and see your butter goes up by 36%, more than a third, what would you think? Would you be happy? Would you start somehow buying less butter, trying to cut on butter, perhaps? Now, prices of raw milk increased by 23.1% on year-to-year basis. First half of the year. It all is based on raw milk, right? Raw milk goes up, everything goes up. And what will happen now? Well, I know because I lived through it. Price increases force buyers to purchase dairy products less frequently in smaller amounts and, most importantly, switch to more affordable options. Oh, friends, I've heard that music before. And I hate one product, food product. I don't even get close to it. I don't ever touch it. Guess what that product is? It's margarine. Because in butter, we didn't have. We simply didn't have. We had this ratio cards. We call them taloni. And every adult in Rostov-on-Don in the 80s was allowed to buy 2 packs of butter, 7 ounce each pack. So 6 packs for our family. Butter was scarcity and it cost a lot. And guess what everyone was getting instead of butter, which was abundant? Margarine. That crap chemical food, I hated its taste. And I still remember it in my mouth. And I don't even get close. When I'm at the store, I try not to look at it. That's how much I hate margarine. That's the only food I hate. Okay? Hey, Putin wanted everyone to go back to the USSR. Well, they are back into the USSR. They're buying more and more margarine now. Um, Unbelievable. You know what? Looking at the different angle, for example, from this one, perhaps it's all good. Perhaps Russians will simply eat less. But hey, you know what? That's medicinal fasting. What doctors say? You want to be healthy, fast. Water fasting, dry fasting, butter, no, 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 not for you. Fast, eat less. Why not? Now, let's move to Texas. Not Texas, the state, but Texas, the money that we pay. Numerous changes are coming to Russia's tax system. And all changes take effect on January 1st. And they have introduced so many changes to the. It's actually funny because a big overhaul of Russian tax system happened exactly 10 months ago on January 1st. They prepared the amendments, the changes into the system in the summer of 2024. And then on 1st of January, we started paying more taxes in Russia. And back then, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Economic Development, they sweared. They said, you know what, for 6 years, at least we're not going to touch the system. The taxes will stay the same. We promise, we guarantee. 10 months later, they are rehauling the system again. How? Well, by simply raising taxes, That's plain and simple. Now, I want to tell you. Oh, boy. No, I'm sitting here in Uzbekistan and I'm laughing, okay? Because I don't do business in Russia. I don't live in Russia. I don't earn any. I don't have a job in Russia, obviously. To me, it's kind of like amusing. Now, value-added tax is increased from 20% to 22%. Well, we've talked a lot about that already. The simplified tax system threshold for small businesses is reduced from 60 million in annual revenue to 10 million. It's reduced by 6 times. Businesses earning more than 10 million rubles per year, and that's a little over $100,000, $108,000, something like that. That's annual revenue. These small businesses will have to pay value added tax. In plain English, Russian small businesses are screwed. There are more and more reports of people just taking their telephones and filming and crying and complaining and asking question, how do I do business from now on? And many have plans to close their doors. Okay. Next Wednesday report, I have quite a few videos accumulated, and I'm gonna show you what regular Russian people are saying about this new tax system. Small business owners, that's the cream of the crop. Those who take risk, those who create value, those who are not afraid to, do something with their lives. Anyway, value-added tax is a big one. Now, excise rates, also excise taxes, will be indexed to the inflation levels in 2026 and one more time in 2027. Okay. Excise taxes on alcohol and cigarettes will be raised above the inflation level. Why is that so? Perhaps the inflation that you have on paper is not the real life inflation, and then you are adjusting your excise taxes for booze and cigarettes according to real inflation level. Okay, perhaps that. Well, they think they can fool us, but you know what? In reality, they actually fool us. They fool Russian people who don't care, who look at this information, don't think. I'm drinking water, and average Russian person looks at these numbers and goes, "Oh my God, I'm gonna break my head," and pours vodka and then goes, "Ah, so much better now." Anyway, uh, personal income tax benefits from the sale of property are canceled. It used to be that you were exempt under certain circumstances if you sold real estate. Now the exemption from personal income tax applied only if property is owned for at least 3 years or more. Now, taxes for IT companies increase by 100% from 7.6 to 15%. Not too shabby. And I remember that there were times when Russian government was bragging about giving tax breaks to IT companies, saying, "Come to Russia, everyone. We have such great taxation for IT companies, startups, and all that." Not any longer. Tax authorities, I love this. Tax authorities will have the right to inspect the territory and premises of companies under tax monitoring program without court order. The amendments significantly expand the scope of monitoring. Now, if to become a subject of monitoring by the federal tax agents, now you had to fall under 3 risk criteria: revenue, assets, and amount taxes paid. Now it will be enough to meet just to fall under one of those risk criterias. Now it means that there will be so many companies audited, so many companies monitored, and now if they can enter your premises and search and monitor and ask and seek and look at everything, poke their noses into without court order, imagine how much they're going to be abusing. Oh boy. It's not like the tax inspectors were saints before, but now it's gonna be bad. Now, the state, Russia's parliament is still working on polishing these amendments and changes and new laws. It's going to be finalized by November 10th, but I guarantee you the changes that might be, they're not going to be towards easing the system. They're only going to be towards tightening it. That's rough. All those taxes, I'm telling you, now, is there anything good about this taxes? Any tax that actually goes down? You know, I looked through the numbers and um, I didn't find anything. All these changes take force on January 1st, 2026, just in a couple months. Now, more on taxes, or to be precise, more on small businesses. More on small businesses. Um, I love switching between the cameras. You know, it's like my new toy. Now, small businesses in Russia are becoming extinct, like dinosaurs. Might as well call them the dinosaurs. The number of companies, small companies in Russia, dropped to a 15-year low as of September 2025. They were just over 3 million business entities in the country. In some provinces, because entire Russia is not created equal. You know, there's Moscow, very rich, incredible part of Russia. There's St. Petersburg. There's large cities such as Rostov, Krasnodar, Novosibirsk, Yekaterinburg, and there's everyone else. So, and some regions, some provinces are poor, some are extremely poor, and some are incredibly poor. Okay, so that there's a difference between them. So, in some provinces, the number of small companies registered in the so-called Unified State Register of Legal Entities, URL. So anyway, that's like the registry, national registry of companies. Now, the number of registered companies has fallen 3 to 6 times over the past few years, since the start of the war, really. Now, do you know what happens when you have fewer companies? Then a reduction in the tax base happens. You simply have fewer companies to tax, therefore, you get smaller tax revenue. That's especially is felt by provincial budgets who depend on taxes. And Moscow doesn't give them money any longer. Contributions to the insurance fund, which are already deeply in deficit in Russia, also declining. That's a certain type of tax that goes to pensions of retired people. Entrepreneurs are closing their businesses partly because of shrinking customer base and partly of sky high taxes. Surprise, surprise. You know, don't tell me that those highly paid economists didn't know that if you raise taxes, you start getting smaller tax revenues. If they didn't know that, they are impotent and they need to be fired and probably jailed. Well, Russia 2025 for you. Now, interesting news came from the United Arab Emirates. I know it's not Russia, but it's connected to Russia. Now, the Federal Tax Service of the UAE has started uh, working closely with Russian Internal Revenue Service, the tax service. It has allowed Russian tax service access to bank accounts and information of companies owned by Russians and bank accounts owned by Russians. Now, Russian Internal Revenue Service started checking Russian account holders all over the banks of the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi, mostly in Dubai and Sharjah. There's three Emirates that are very popular, especially Dubai. Now, this information comes from a Russian source called Business Consulting. I think that is true. I double checked it. It looks like it's happening. More than 100 requests from Russia's Internal Revenue Service are known at this time, both to tax residents of Russia and non-residents of Russia. Basically, people who have left Russia and have nothing to do with Russia, but Russia doesn't let them go, especially those rich folks in Dubai. Most often, the tax authorities ask to explain the origin of funds in UAE accounts, and that's Russian authorities. They request to provide documents on business activities. Holy moly, that's that's nothing to do with Russia. That's Dubai. You gotta understand this, folks. This is just totally crazy. Um, One of the attorneys, tax attorneys, was interviewed by RBK, and he claimed that Russian Internal Revenue Service doesn't trust formal residency, tax residency in UAE and in Dubai, and is ready to challenge the resident status if, for example, person has family or business interest in Russia but is residing in Dubai. Most Russian Internal Revenue Service requests concern the period from 2022 to 2024. The era of assets invisible to Russian tax authorities in Dubai and other Emirates is over. There's no question about that. In 2026, there's a new agreement between Russia and United Arab Emirates about double taxation avoidance will come into effect, and that may lead to even greater number of checks, investigations, and criminal cases. Fines for failure to notify about foreign account amount only to 5,000 rubles, which is not much, $80. However, if the account holder does not declare the income received abroad, the Russian tax service may additionally charge personal income tax, fines, and penalties, and they are big. Of course, Russian state keeps on shoving its hairy, greasy hand deeper down to pockets of Russian people, even when they leave Russia and move their money someplace far away. And that hand is just so disgusting. It's so long. It just tries to get into your pocket, even if you're far away. Makes me sick. I have some good news. Good news. Don't worry, forget about the bad news. Forget about all. Doesn't matter to you because you're not at Dubai anyway. Russian church. Oh, don't you love Russian church? I do. I do. The fantastic newsmakers. They come up with, they provide so many news for this channel. It's unbelievable. So, anyway, Russian church needs money. Yeah, plain and simple, obviously. Now, listen to this very carefully. I know there are a lot of women out there watching right now. And I personally think that men and women are absolutely equal in rights. Um, I act equally to my wife, to other women. I've never discriminated anyone. I think we're, the same. Russian church doesn't think so. You see, according to Russian Orthodox Church, Russian women don't need a lot of money. No, they don't. You see, even 100,000 rubles, a little, just a tiny little bit over $1,000, can become a source of terrible worries. That's not me saying. That's the high priest Kirill Markovsky said last week. $1,000 can become a source of terrible worries. Now, the high priest believes that a true Christian woman, well, probably Christian Russian woman, should give 90%, 90,000 rubles out of 100 rubles, 100,000 to the church. Because a good Russian woman doesn't need money. It only needs 10% of whatever she earns. But the church needs money. Russian priests need money. They like money very much. And Markovsky, this high priest Kirill Markovsky, he loves money. Of course, Russian women, give me your money. 90%, whatever you have, whatever you earn, inherit, whatever, just give it to me. I'll take it. You, like good Christian women, you don't need money. Now, among all crazy news that have come from Russian church, this is so absurd that I don't even know what to say about that. This is, perhaps the guy's crazy and he just like speaks publicly, makes statements. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments. Oh boy. Real estate. Real estate. The news from Russian real estate market. According to the results of the 3 quarters of 2025, the demand for new construction decreased in quite a few provinces, and in 3 provinces of Russia, it decreased the biggest. In Sevastopol, which is the annexed land from Ukraine, okay, currently controlled and managed by Russia, Sevastopol, minus 50.3%. The demand for new construction has dropped by 50%. Krasnoyarsk province, that's Western Siberia, it's east of Russia, 37.1% decline. In Volgograd, that's very central Russia, south of Moscow, southeast a little bit, a few hundred miles. Volgograd has seen the drop of 32.8%. That's the results of the first 9 months of 2025. And in general, on year-to-year basis for the first 9 months, there has been a decline of demand in 25 of 28 regions of Russia. So they've taken Russia, divided it by 28 regions, and there are 84 provinces altogether. So for simplicity's sake, they've taken 28 locations, and in 24, I'm sorry. Oh boy, I'm getting confused here. 28 locations divided Russia into 28 parts. 25 of those with large real estate markets have seen the decline in demand. Such data is contained in a study by a real estate portal called bnmap.pro. Well, it's expected. I cannot say that it's something new to me. I've been talking about the decline Russia market since last October. And it makes sense. If people can't afford butter, if they can't afford milk or kefir, they certainly cannot afford new apartments and new buildings, new houses. Now, The next event I'm waiting in Russian real estate market is the first collapse of a big developer, and I think it's going to cause the domino effect, and everyone else will start falling, and the banks will start falling as well. There's huge overstock of new construction in Russia, and people do not buy it. No money, no disposable income. Now, friends, I have a bone to pick with you. There are 4,000 people watching this right now and only 1,300 likes. Please like this message if you haven't liked yet. If you like this presentation of mine, please hit the like button. And if you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe now. That's a very strong signal to the algorithm of YouTube that if you subscribe while you watch, that it means you find the channel and this video interesting, and it gives you more, recommends you more of my videos. So please subscribe if you have not subscribed, like if you have not liked. And also, after this message, after I'm done, please leave a comment sharing what you think. And if you have nothing to share, that happens sometimes, happens to the best of us. Me too. After some messages, I just don't know what to say in the comments. Well, just tell me which part of this message you like the most, or which part of the world you are at right now watching this message from, or have some encouraging words, something like, hey, Constant, you're doing a great job, we like your channel, something like that. It's very pleasant for me to read such words. Coffee would be great too. I love English tea and coffee. And friends, thank you for doing that. Thank you so much. Now, another thing, there was a very fair warning to all Russians this past week. The warning was about significant increase in airfares. Aeroflot, Russia's largest airline, Aeroflot CEO Alexandrovsky warned about the rise of prices of airfares. Well, yes, they constantly Russians, so it will not be a surprise. For example, Russians were warned about fines for abandoned land plots. Russians were warned about fines for speeding. Russians were warned about sharp increase in book prices. Russians were warned about 20 to 30% increase in car prices due to the new utilization tax fee, recycling tax. Russians were warned about 1 million ruble fine for collecting certain mushrooms. Russians were warned about a sharp increase in gasoline prices. Russians were warned about the risk of land confiscations. And the latest, and I love this, Russian ambulance drivers are warned that they're going to be fined for driving without fastened seatbelts. Warnings, warnings, warnings. I just give you a few warnings I have heard over the last, 4 or 5 weeks. Not too bad, huh? At least Russians cannot say, well, you didn't warn us. Of course they did. Look, they warned you. They warned you. So they're fair. They love you. They warn you. That's how Russia works. Now let's talk about banking. this is quite something. No, it's becoming too crazy that I really don't know how to approach this news. This is the strangest decision ever. The Russian government has given the right to Russian provinces, the government of Russian provinces, local governments, to create microcredit organizations to issue mortgages. No, I already mentioned microcredit organization in Russia. It lends you a little bit of money, up to a few $100s. but at outrageous interest rate. Sometimes it reaches 1,000% per year. The idea is if you run out of money and you're waiting for the next paycheck for a few days, you go and get, 30, 40, 50 bucks micro loan. So it gets you by, you eat, or if you need money for something, you get it. So you do pay high interest rate, but the small amount, it kind of like you don't really see the effect of that. Now, a lot of people take multiple microloans and don't. The longer you keep it, the more you pay, and it's just crazy. A lot of Russians are just in big troubles for that. Now, microloan organizations are privately owned. These are businesses, never owned by the state, and now they will be. Now the state gives the right for provinces to establish their own microcredit organization, microloan organization, mortgage systems programs. On October 22nd, a law came into effect allowing provincial microcredit companies, MCCs, to issue mortgages. The Central Bank of Russia states that this is necessary to implement state programs to expand housing availability in the regions. You see, no one is buying apartments, those huge numbers of decline, and somehow to stimulate sales, they're trying to make money more accessible to people. But at what price? Now, 100% of shares of such microloan organizations issuing mortgages must belong exclusively to the subjects of the Russian Federation, to provincial governments. There will be no more than one of such microcredit organization, mortgage organization in a province. So basically, the government has um, it, it doesn't have competition. Okay, so the Bank of Russia will supervise such loan companies, microloan mortgage companies, and maintain a list of such companies so Russian people have access to it. They know that everything is legit. How these organizations will operate and under what conditions, and what's the most important thing to me is what kind of collateral they're going to be taking for their loans. And it's one thing to get $20 loan for 3 days at, let's say, 700% of annual interest rate. And that's completely another thing to get a mortgage for, tens, perhaps hundreds of thousands of dollars, well, tens most likely. At what percentage, at what interest rate? This is crazy. Nothing is, you see, they already made the law, but nothing is known about that. The central bank claims that the provinces have not yet shown increased interest in creating such microcredit companies, but the legislative base is there. They're trying to stimulate. They know there's a huge collapse coming to the real estate. It's here already. I mean, minus 50% of demand, minus 50% in sales year to year. What is this to you? To me, it's a big crisis. Now, the next news is a little personal. Despite being pressured by Russian state, followed by the secret police KGB, and demonetized by Google for reason that I'm still trying to find out, I am still here. Shaken but not broken. I am here, I am breathing, I am alive. I will go on, you have my promise, friends. Thank you very much for your time, for your support, for prayers and love. Thank you for coffees that you bought me at buymeacoffee.com, for PayPal and Patreon. The financial support is much appreciated, but never required. So thank you so very much from the bottom of my heart. There's, I always talk about this news, and they're always doom and gloom. You know, they're dark. They're without future. They're just not. They're stressful. They're people in Russia who I talk to. Some of them are already very scared. They're freaking out. Okay, not good news. They ask me for news sometimes. They know that I'm on top of things, and I don't have anything good to tell them. Well, actually, I've been thinking, what can I tell you? What is good in Russia? Um, there's one market in Russia that is doing fantastic, the best time ever, and I keep on telling him. I just want you to remember. I don't forget that the only industry that is doing fabulously is funeral industry, because more and more customers come every single day. You know. Now let's jump to the third and the last part of my report: microeconomic agents. Oh, I'm sorry. Microeconomic agents is the first one. That's macroeconomy, of course. Macroeconomic indicators. Here, I usually talk about GDP, about inflation, about money supply, things like that. That's macro stuff. Um, General health of Russian economy, and I'll try to be brief, and I'll tell you a couple things today. I'll first of all I'll tell you of an indicator of macroeconomic indicator that shows a lot and that tells us a lot. And that macroeconomic indicator is international trade. Now, foreign trade balance, in other words. I'm going to give you some numbers. I'm going to compare month to month and year to year. Now, in August of 2025, there was um, they were experts worth of 31 billion rubles. Doesn't make any sense. Is it billions? Yeah, billions. Can't be trillion. Billions, yes. 31 billion rubles. So that is 17.1% less than in July. 17.1%. That's how much Russia has sold to other countries with products, materials, services, mineral resources. Now, if we are talking about year to year, that's going to be 8 minus 8.9%. If we take first 8 months of 2024 and compare first 8 months to 2025, decline of 8.9%. That's how much Russia has sold abroad. Now, that's now let's talk about importing. How much Russia has bought from abroad? 24 billion rubles in the month of August, and that is 4.9% less than in July. And June, July are usually slow months, and August they're slow months because it's summertime in Russia, and usually the August picks up because business activity picks up. July is the laziest one, but not this year. August was much worse than July. So much less was sold in August than in July. And if we take first 8 months of 2025 compared to 2024, then this year we will see 7.3% decline in how much Russia has sold of everything abroad. Now, there's a proficit in a trade balance. It means that Russia still sells more than it buys. For one simple reason: Russia sells tons of oil, natural gas, and metals and raw materials, and that's why it sells more than it buys. Forget about if you cut raw materials, oil, and gas out of the equation, you will have a huge deficit. But even with oil, natural gas, and we see that sales are dropping, and there is still profit, meaning Russia still sells more than it buys. There's a profit of 100. Uh, no, yeah, 7.5 million. That's right, on top of my head. There's a profit of 7.5 billion rubles, but that is 41% decline on month-to-month basis. Russia sold 41. Russia earned a profit of 41% less than in July. And if we talk of year and compare on year-to-year basis, that's going to be 13.7% decline in the first 8 months of this year. Russia exports less and less raw materials, fossil fuels, metals, and we see that the profit was very large in the past years, and now it's shrinking and it's getting close to zero. And after that, there is deficit. And with this deficit, then it means Russian companies will have to come up with money somewhere to buy things from China and other countries. And those dollars and yuans, not going to be enough. And it means that Russian ruble is going to be devalued. So one of my forecasts to watch Russian ruble as it loses value. I think the process will start taking place in the upcoming weeks. And I think it'll be devalued by a great deal by the new year. I don't know by how much, but it's going to be significant. I want you to mark my words on that. Thank you. So now, the last news, and that's the most significant news I want everyone to know. This is a nuclear bomb has been just dropped on Russia by the USA. Now, before let's talk about yesterday. What happened in previous weeks and I'd say 8 to 10 weeks. We've been seeing that Russia exports its oil, bread maker, one of two bread makers. The biggest one is oil, and then second is natural gas. Natural gas is basically kaput. Gazprom, Russia's natural monopoly, belongs to the state, exports 10% of what it used to export at its peak. Now, it's a catastrophe. It's a disaster. Okay. Right now, Russia has three largest customers. First is India. India buys most of Russian oil. Second is China, and third is everyone else, basically. India right now around 1.5 million gallons of oil per day. China about a little over 1 million, and 900 everyone else. Now, we have been seeing that since beginning of 2025, India has slowly been dropping buying Russian oil, been buying it less and less. Now, the numbers, by the end of 2025, India was buying 40% of its oil from Russia. Right now, it's buying 36%. Well, it's very significant drop in terms of absolute numbers. Now, India has been threatened by the USA and has been placed tariffs on. Donald Trump threatened India with 500% tariffs, but changed his mind, of course, as usual, placed 100% tariffs. And the Indians started caving in. They started buying less and less of Russian oil. And about 8 weeks ago, that's when the process started. And right now, we are at the point where Donald Trump talked to Indian Prime Minister Modi a couple days ago, and Modi voiced readiness to give up on Russian oil altogether. I don't think that will happen. Okay, but before the war, way before, India was just buying 1% from Russia. So it happened before. So India was not a customer, and now it's one of the biggest. That's the biggest customer actually. So I don't think that India will go back to 1% because they like cheap oil, but they will be buying less and less Russian oil. We have been seeing the trend, and that's my point, in the past couple of months. Now, Indians, there have been a lot of debate here in the comments and in the live stream chats and in the media, and some experts have been debating. Some been saying, look, Indians keep on buying Russian oil as much as they were buying before. But you know what? Numbers don't lie. From 40% to 36%. The trend is the decline. And some say that Russia will continue selling oil. But the thing is, the hard fact, Indians have been diversifying their channels of buying oil. They started buying from the USA and from the Middle Eastern countries, obviously Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the likes, more and more. And then China held out until very recently. But a few weeks ago, China also started diversifying its oil supplies. It started buying oil from South America. Yes. And that was an early warning sign for Russia. And of course, Russia at the point where even if it hears the signs, it's kind of like against the wall. There are no moves for Russia left. Now, another big question is, do the sanctions work or they don't? And a lot of people saying, well, the sanctions are not placed on Russia, not very effective. Well, guess what? Over 3.5 years, well, 3 years really, Russia lost around $180 billion due to the sanctions. Without sanctions, it would have earned $180 billion more. That's not my numbers. I learned it from some experts, and I double checked to the best of my ability. It's hard to double check, but the numbers seem legit. I take them as the truth. Sanctions do work. Numbers don't lie. $180 billion. That's the price of sanctions against Russian oil. Now, that was before. Today, holy moly. That's for the past couple months, there've been going a political exchange between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. My understanding, Donald Trump really wants peace. He wants peace on pretty much any conditions. He wants to know that everyone to know that he was the negotiator of the peace between Russia and Ukraine. He wants part of a piece of his peace, And Vladimir Putin doesn't want peace. There are like water and fire. Okay, and Vladimir Putin pretends that he wants peace, but he doesn't, and it's obvious to everyone. And then finally, it became obvious to Donald Trump, and he got very upset. The last straw that broke camel's back was Donald Trump talked about peace in Ukraine with Vladimir Putin again for an hour and a half, and then he made a statement. He promised everyone that there'd be a meeting in Budapest. within 2 weeks, definitely. We all heard that at the press conference. And then Russians started laughing at Donald Trump. And then Marco Rubio talked to Lavrov, and then Americans started smelling that stinky substance, you know. And then Marco Rubio said, well, we're going to postpone this meeting. It's not going to happen in 2 weeks. And the Russians started laughing. They started saying, you can't postpone what wasn't scheduled. So basically, when Putin and Trump talked, obviously some kind of an agreement was made between two of them for meeting in Budapest. And then Putin backed out. He said that Trump lied, basically, ha ha ha, clown. He said that many times in messages, hidden messages, okay? But that he keeps on telling that. And I think this time Donald Trump really got it. He understood that Putin, I don't know, it's been like 8 or 9 times already going back and forth. But this time, Donald Trump actually did something. For the first time, he placed more sanctions upon Russia. Well, his first sanctions. And the sanctions on Russian oil and the direct sanctions of two companies, Rosneft, Russia's largest company, Lukoil, Russia's second largest company. One of the biggest oil companies in the world, major suppliers of Russian oil. They are, and a couple other companies, and that's it. There's no one else. As soon as Donald Trump officially, and it was like instant, not like, oh, you have to take it to Congress, then to Senate, then the president. Somehow I didn't follow the sanctions. All I learned is they magically appeared like that, And Russians freaked out. Yes, they did. Because the Chinese, a few hours ago, the Chinese announced that they are stopping buying Russian oil. Now, in one of my previous streams, about 8 weeks ago, when we just started having this crisis develop for Russia, I broke down the customer base, and it's not difficult to do. Again, India number one, I think it was buying 1.8, 1.6, something like that, million barrels per day. Then China, number two, 1 million, and everyone else was 900,000 barrels per day. And then I said in these exact words, I should look up, it's still out in their internet. I said, look, there's a big risk for Russia because if Indians decide to buy less oil, Russia still, will live. Okay, not gonna make as much money, but it'd live. But for example, if Indians decide to completely back out of buying Russian oil or the Chinese, then this portfolio of customers of Russia is not diversified. And that's a huge, huge risk. 8 weeks later, this risk materialized. The Chinese are out, and the Indians have stated their intention to buy so much less Russian oil. This is how Russian markets reacted. NVTK is Novatek, another oil company, Rosneft, LKOH, Lukoil, Sber, Gazprom, Tatneft, Tatneft, it's another oil company. This is it. This is how Russian market is reacting. It's sliding, and I think this is the general mood of what's happening in Russia right now. Now, the large, I at first when I saw this announcement that the Chinese decided not to buy Russian oil from Rosneft and Lukoil, I thought it was a fake news, and I double checked it. The largest Chinese state-owned oil companies have stopped already purchasing Russian oil right after the US imposed sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil. Now, this is reported by Reuters, and I trust Reuters. It's trustworthy media. But what I trust even more when I see with my own eyes when Putin starts getting agitated and stressed. And that's exactly what happened. He addressed this issue today twice. At first, he told Russians nothing to worry about. Russian economy is strong. It will, yes, there are troubles with sanctions, additional sanctions, but we will prevail. We will come on top. That's what he told the Russians. And then he made another statement saying that by placing such sanctions upon Russia, the entire world will suffer, and the Western customers will feel the heat at the gas stations all over America, Canada, Australia, European countries. So he started warning. And then when I see that happening, I know Putin is not scared, but he's worried. I know that this is for real. I know that the Chinese, this is it. Bada bing, bada boom, bada done. That's it. They're not buying Russian oil. Probably from mediator companies, from shell companies, they will be buying some, but that's risk. And you know what? Risk costs money, and Russian oil is going to be so much more discounted for the Chinese. And if it's discounted, you see, it's costs for Russian companies. It costs a lot to extract oil because it's in Siberia, permafrost. Most of oil fields have been exhausted. They pump a lot of water. Then they put, it's not the highest quality oil. Whether in Saudi Arabia, the oil is right near the surface and it's cheap to pump. Okay, so Russian oil costs a lot. I've heard estimates about $35 to $40 per barrel, just that cost of Russian oil. So, and if you sell it at 47, that's the price right now, at 47, then your margin is not that great. And the thing is, you sell it at greater discount because it's illegal. And those who buy it from you, they risk a lot. Okay? So Russian oil is done, at least with China. And if the Indians will do as they say they will do, then this is bad. Now, the companies PetroChina, Sinopec, SNOOC, and Zhenhua Oil have stopped buying Russian oil. At least in the short term, um, they will refrain from buying Russian oil delivered by sea. And that's the only oil there is out there in Russia. Now, China imports 1.4 million barrels of Russian oil per day by sea, and that's more than they increased the imports. They used to be 1, now 1.4. But it was before today. Starting tomorrow, no more oil. Some of that 1.4 million barrels go to independent companies, including very small operators, and then Reuters investigates more. And estimates of purchases by Chinese state companies vary widely, but there's understanding that it's going to be less and less Russian oil bought. Um, there are some insiders in Rosneft and Lukoil, and most of them say that the leadership of both companies is not in a very good mood right now because there are troubles ahead. Now, Indian refineries also intend to sharply reduce imports of Russian crude oil to comply with the US sanctions. That is coming from different sources. And a lot of people can say, well, you know what, Indians will continue buy. They're going to buy less, at least. And they're going to be buying with higher discounts, deeper discounts. And that's equally good. India's largest buyer of Russian oil, Reliance Industries, plans to reduce or stop importing oil from Russia altogether. State owned refineries are currently checking that they do not buy oil directly from Rosneft and Lukoil, because this is it. This is I can't say it's death of Lukoil and Rosneft, but that's a huge, huge blow to them and to Russian state. Now, Rosneft and Lukoil account for more than 50% of all oil production extraction in Russia. Their shares have plummeted. In the last 24 hours, Lukoil stock prices have dropped by 5.44% and Rosneft by 3.72%. And I think that the drop is just the beginning. Well, we have quite the news today. And I am surprised by Donald Trump. And it's actually the first time he did something. We'll see if he follows up. We'll see if he follows up. Then I expect a lot of news like that every single day coming out of Russia. There are dozens and dozens news that can make headlines at daily streams. And I try to keep everyone informed. I do live streams here, but also on Patreon. I do what I call Formula 54. I find 9 news that I find significant, and I make them available to patrons, sometimes with my commentaries and analysis. I'm trying to keep everyone to stay on top of things Russia. Now, 54 news a week, 9 news a day, 6 days a week. Also, sometimes I throw in a daily snippet. That's more than a news, less than a live stream, just an unrehearsed conversation with patrons. My thought or some significant event I would like to zero in a little more, usually a few minutes, from 5 to 10 minutes. I talk about something I find important. So if you want to stay on top of things Russia, then please consider signing up and becoming patron of Inside Russia. Now you know where to look. And on top of that, if you sign up, become patron, you also help out this channel. So thank you very much. I'm going to place the links down below after I'm done with the stream, in the pinned comment and in the video description. So consider becoming patrons. And this concludes week 43 of Russia's economic summary review. Thank you very much for watching. Carthago delenda est.